Well, welcome to the Botanical Medicine Study course with me, your host and instructor for all things botanical medicine. And my name is Stephanie Georgiev. Thank you so much for spending your valuable time with me, and a special thank you to all long-term subscribers, and a big welcome to new subscribers. Now, at the time of the posting of this episode of Herb of the Week, in North America, there is much preparation for the upcoming eating holiday that is supposed to mark the end of the harvest in autumn. What would autumn be without apples? As the Botanical Medicine Study course is focusing on the system that is challenged by autumn, the metal element in traditional Chinese medicine, which dominates the lung and large intestine, we will explore this wonderful fruit that has over 7,500, that's 7,500 different varieties grown throughout the world. The fruit that has that most famous adage associated with it that started in the Pembrokeshire region sometime in the 1800s, our herb of the week is the apple. Now, a trigger warning and spoiler alert. I'm only going to talk about the fruit of the apple tree, not the bark or the leaves. I have never used either personally or clinically, and I'm actually not aware of many supplements on the market that are made of those parts of the apple tree. And if you are aware of those, good for you. Excellent. Yay. Now, apple, known by its botanical Latin binomial as Malus domestica, and we can take a hint from the second label. It's definitely been domesticated. It is a round edible fruit that's produced by the apple tree. And there's lots of different apples. It's called Malus species. Apples are actually in the rose family, and it's Rosaceae, which is kind of a funny word for such a beautiful and delicious plant family. Most of what it tastes amazing and fabulous comes from the rose family. But Rosaceae kind of sounds like a skin condition. Now, apple trees are cultivated worldwide, as I said, with over 7,500 different varieties available. Now, the tree originated in Central Asia, and its wild ancestor is called Malus cerevisiae, and it is still found somewhere in Central Asia. Now, apples have been grown for thousands of years in Europe and Asia, and they were introduced to North America by European colonists. Some people attribute this to Johnny Appleseed. I know there's lots of folklore and interesting history around that. But basically, it was interesting when the colonists came to both Americas, they just brought stuff with them. They brought animals and they brought plants. It was the greatest plant exchange ever. Did in a lot of the indigenous species, but the apple tree, I think, was a very nice addition. So this other old adage, as American as apple pie, basically can be applied to anything that migrates and is not indigenous. Now, the apple is a deciduous tree, and it stands anywhere from 6 to 15 feet tall. And it can even grow up to almost 50 feet. I was living at a beautiful intentional community in Minnesota, and they had some gorgeous apple trees there. And when everything's in bloom, it's just like living in a Maxfield Parrish painting. Now, the bark of the trunk is a dark gray or gray brown, And the young branches are more reddish. And the young twigs have fine downy hairs, but they become hairless when older. Now, apples blossom in the spring. And what's interesting is they blossom at the same time that the leaves begin to sprout. This is kind of different. Now, when the flower buds first begin to open, there are 5 petaled flowers. They're rose pink, and they fade to white or light pink when they're fully open. Now, the fruit is called a palm that matures in late summer or autumn. And in botany, a palm is a type of fruit that's produced by flowering plants of the subfamily Malinae of that wonderful family of the rose. Palm fruits consist of a central core containing multiple small seeds, and it is enveloped by a tough membrane and then surrounded by an edible layer of flesh, which to me is the best part of the palm. Now, there are many, many constituents in apples. There's lots of vitamins, minerals, and so on. But the two biggie constituents that contribute to the healing aspect of the fruit are malic acid. We also have tartaric acid, but malic acid is one of the biggies, and pectin. And you can see that wonderful chain down there from the malic acid is from Wikipedia Commons, and pectin is from my favorite go-to Science Direct. Now, you know me, I'm a big fan of taking herbs and foods in their whole natural form, mainly because nature has created this incredible symphony of interactions between substances that cannot always be replaced when they're isolated or synthesized. So the malic acid within apple works in tandem with all the vitamins and the pectin and the thises and the that's, and has this incredible, wonderful quality. And when you isolate it, it doesn't always have all the actions that you particularly want. That's just my opinion. Now, for those of you who are quite familiar with the supplement market, you may either take one or both of these substances in pill or capsule form. I used to work in a wonderful integrative pharmacy, and there were just a pill for everything. And I was like, why don't you just eat the vegetable or the fruit? But that was just me. It wasn't a good selling point for the supplements. Now, malic acid is an organic compound with the molecular formula that you see before you, courtesy of Wikipedia Commons. Now, malic acid is formally a dicarboxylic acid that is actually made by all living organisms, but you and I are most familiar with it as it creates the sour taste of fruits. So you'll find malic acid in a lot of fruits and berries and things like that. When it's isolated, it's used as a food additive in many prepared items. You'll also see it in many body products, such as face creams and such. And sometimes it's referred to as an alpha hydroxy acid, but malic acid in and of itself contributes to the sloughing off of dead skin, which is why it's often in creams and soaps made for things like acne and wrinkles. And it's also why if you just use grated raw apple on your skin, you can get some of the same effects without spending all sorts of money. Now, malic acid is also involved in the Krebs cycle and the chemical process the body uses to make energy. Now, it also enhances the production of saliva, okay? So, when you bite into an apple, sometimes you start drooling or your mouth just gets nice and moist. That's what the malic acid does. And so malic acid will be used in mouth spray for people who have dry mouth. And sometimes dry mouth is a side effect of some forms of chemotherapy or radiation treatment for certain cancers. Also, sometimes people have certain things removed from their mouth, like salivary glands. And there's certain disease, things like Sjogren's syndrome, where the mouth is very dry. So you get a mouth spray with malic acid in it. Now, pectin, for those of you who make jams and jellies, you add this wonderful substance to make it thicker. And that's kind of a hint as to what it is. It is a soluble fiber, which is found in many fruits, most notably apples. Apples has a lot of pectin in it, but it's also in pears and quinces. Quince is more popular in Europe, I find, but it's a delightful fruit. And there's a lot of pectin in oranges, which is why you should eat them rather than squish out the delicious juice and throw away all the good stuff. Now, pectin binds substances in the intestines, and that is a huge plus, especially in modern life, because we're exposed to so many awful things like pollution. But pectin also adds bulk to the stools. Now, there's some studies that say pectin might reduce cholesterol, how much cholesterol in the body that we absorb from foods. One benefit of pectin is that it basically helps rid the body of things like toxic chemicals, heavy metals, and harmful bacteria. So let's say you've been sprayed, with some sort of insecticide, not because you want to be, but because, some organization in a local area wants to get rid of some sort of bug. And you're upset about that. What you can do is take pectin supplements, and the pectin will bind to the, the pesticide. If you're exposed to heavy metals, mercury, et cetera, et cetera. This is a wonderful thing to take because it binds to any of those toxins and basically holds them in your bowels for excretion into the sewer. Now, for those of you who like to make jams and jellies, you usually put pectin in the pot, so to say, to thicken the fruit, and it binds to all the delicious stuff. Now, what's quite amazing is that apples have both of these substances, which contribute to that apple a day keeps the doctor away business. So these are some of the reasons why. Now, the delta galacturonic acid is it's the D-galacturonic acid. It's also called delta, is a sugar acid. And this is one of the main components of pectin. And this is isolated from all sorts of things, but also from apples. And it's used in the cosmetic and pharmaceutical industry for all sorts of things, particularly for vitamin C production, which I think is really interesting. And what this substance does, isolated, is it helps feed the good bacteria, such as acidophilus, grow in our intestines. And when we have enough food for the good bacteria, the bad bacteria doesn't take over. So you're seeing all these things on the market like prebiotics, probiotics. I haven't seen any postbiotics, but you need a substrate to grow all these wonderful microbes that help balance out and prevent disease. And here's the secret. You could eat an apple. Okay. But if you want to take these expensive supplements, that's good for you. Now, there's all kinds of nutritional benefits of apples. They're high in fiber, obviously. They're very high in pectin. And that's, fiber is really good, first of all, to grow all the healthy microbes. Pectin helps bind, toxins in the system. Um, it's, these are just wonderful things in general. It's also, apples are very high in a lot of wonderful vitamins and minerals, and vitamin C, B6, E, and other antioxidants. It's very high in potassium, vitamin K, and they're all the things that these vitamins do is why apples are so good for you. And we've covered those. These, uh, yeah, they just improve human health. And I don't know if they've done any rat studies, but I think the rat studies with apples would certainly be much more pleasurable than the drug studies. Now, the medicinal action of apples are legion. Number one, benefits digestion. You know that old diet, when you're little and you got some sort of stomach flu, your doctor would put you on a quote unquote brat diet. Well, that's bananas, rice, apples, and toast. And the reason for that is apples benefit digestion. It's also really good as a liver tonic and obviously as a laxative. My little brother, it's interesting. I'm sure he doesn't watch this program, so he won't mind if I say this. But the poor thing had some really bad trouble with his digestion, particularly elimination, and he would be sitting on the toilet agonizing and screaming, "Get me the apples!" because they help. So the other thing is because of all those wonderful nutrients and substance, it's actually very anti-inflammatory. So there are some studies that say it benefits arthritis. So, hey, an anti-inflammatory in general. It's also, apples are very antiseptic, and it's basically because there's something called acetic acid in there. And it's just really good at killing not good bacteria and feeding the good microbes. And because of all these wonderful properties, it is an immune modulator. So apples are just some, especially if you're suffering from some sort of autoimmune disease, organic apples. Sometimes when people are allergic to certain foods, it's not that they're allergic to the food, they're allergic to the pesticides that are sprayed on it. And if you get organic apples, if you have autoimmune disease, this is just a really good thing to eat on a very regular basis. Because of all the toxins, apples are really good at detox. And if you're doing any type of fast, I'm not a huge proponent of like fasting, just going right into a fast. I think you should gradually go into a fast and then maybe just only eat a few different foods, and apples would be one of them. And basically, because when you start fasting, your body starts shedding things. And if you have a lot of heavy metals and pesticides and things in your system, and you just start unleashing those out, you can do some organ damage. But if you're eating apples, that binds those toxins and keeps them from your liver and kidneys. Um, Apples also help even out blood sugar, mainly because of the fiber and the pectin. So there are some studies that say these are really, really great for if you're a diabetic. Obviously, you have to work out, your carbs, etc. But it's just a really good thing to put into your system if you're suffering from any type of blood sugar issue. Now, there are wonderful energetics of apple, and these are really more from a Chinese medicine perspective. And because apples come from Central Asia, obviously the Chinese probably have a lot of insights on that. Now, the big ye with apples is that they are cooling. And cooling is a huge thing, particularly uh, basically in lung ailments, and especially if you're having any type of bacterial lung infection. It's also obviously sweet and sour. Some apples are more sweeter, others are more sour, but it's usually a lovely combination of both those flavors. And because of that, um, any type of sweet and sour combo basically generates fluids and moistens dryness. So it's really good for tonifying the lung. You can make basically apple tea. You just slice up apples and boil them for a little bit, and then strain out the apples and drink that delicious water, and that will help generate fluids. Really good. I'm from Southern California, and autumn is the time of the Santana winds, and everything is so bloody dry. And apples are a wonderful thing to eat, any shape, form, applesauce, raw apples, baked apples, whatever. And especially the apple water is really delicious. And it just moistens dryness. And in Chinese medicine, constipation is considered dry. That's a dry condition. So if you're eating apples, it will moisten your intestines and help get things moving. But as I said, it's very tonifying for the lung, especially lung heat. And that's any type of like bronchitis or lung infection with blood streaked yellow sputum. This is what you should be doing. You should be eating apples. Now, you can also make a poultice of raw grated apple, and you can put it over your closed eyes, please, not opened eyes, closed eyes, for 20 minutes or so. And this can help relieve itchy, irritated red eyes. And you can also use a little poultice of raw apples for burns, slight burns, and release a sunburn. So lovely, nice smelling way to deal with those problems. Now, apple cider vinegar, there are like entire books dedicated to this. And, if you read these books, this will cure everything you could possibly think of. And I think some of what these books say are good. Now, apple cider vinegar is high in acidic acid, and that's the primary active compound, and it gives the strong sour smell and flavor. And scientists believe that this acid, the acetic acid, is responsible for all of the wonderful health benefits of apple cider vinegar. Mainly because it kills pathogens, lots of bacteria. It also helps to lower blood sugar levels. And it's a wonderful thing to incorporate if you're a diabetic because you're having trouble with your blood sugar. And also, most of us are eating too many simple carbohydrates and sugar and, obesity, all that other stuff. So it's really good for aiding with weight loss. Just taking maybe a tablespoon in some water every day. If you want, you can put it on salads or your vegetables. It also, because of its wonderful, all those constituents that are in apples and apple cider vinegar, it does help with heart health. It helps, lower different icky things in your blood. So it's just really good for anything you can imagine that has to do with heart health. And if you use dilutions of apple cider vinegar, it will lower the surface pH, and it can help with certain conditions. So ask your dermatologist before you do this, but some people use it for things like eczema and you can use it for all sorts of things, but you need to do dilutions. Now, if you do straight apple cider vinegar, it's a really good thing to clean out cuts and stuff like that. It was used by Romans and Greeks for that purpose. Now, there is a flower essence, which is basically a sun tea of the blossoms of flowers. And this is more of an emotional remedy, but it's from crabapple, and it's really for being kind of cranky, especially if you don't like yourself, and you're depressed and you're anxious and you're just cranky and fussy. I think we should spray this all over North America right now. But this is another use of apples and apple blossoms. Now, how do you take apple? In my opinion, the best way is to eat them. Just eat them. You can eat them raw, or you can make apple sauce, and just basically cooking apples and putting it in, with a emulsion blender and a food processor, or mashing it or whatever, and just put things like ginger and cinnamon, and it's super healthy. Making your own is a lot cheaper and more healthy. A lot of the stuff on the market, it's highly processed. If you're going to buy something on the market, I suggest organic and no added sugar. That's what I suggest. But just make your own. It's very easy. Obviously, you can take apple cider vinegar. You can just take it straight, or dilute it, put it on your vegetables, add it to things. It's really delicious, I think. You can get apple cider vinegar gummies, which I think is kind of funny. Gummies to me are basically candy, but the apple cider vinegar gummies are pretty effective. So you can get those, take 1 or 2 a day. You don't want to take a whole lot because your stomach will get a little upset. And you can also take apple pectin. Everything that I read says you can take stuff for up to 6 months in terms of supplements with no problem. There's one thing you do have to be careful with if you're on any type of medicine for things like epilepsy. Pectin can bind those medicines and make them basically moot. So if you are on any type of specific medication, please talk to your pharmacist and physician before taking supplements. Now, obviously, you can eat an apple. It's not gonna kill you if you're on certain medicines, but you may want to like stagger, like take your medicine and wait, I don't know. And I don't know, but wait a couple hours and then eat your apple. But definitely talk to your pharmacist or physician if you're on any type of medication before you start eating tons of apples or taking apple supplements. Now, we would be here all night long or all day long, whenever you're watching this lovely video, on how to cook with apples. There are no lack of incredible things that you can do with apples. Now, obviously, immersing them in butter, deep frying them, covering them with sugar, kind of X's out all the positive aspects of apple. Obviously, it's delicious to eat, apple pies and apple crumbles and cobblers and fritters and all those sorts of things. But really, the best way to be with apples is to, to bake them, roast them, steam them, make apple sauces, things like that. But definitely just, have some fun. They're quite delicious. I really love baked apples. You just core it, put a little cinnamon, sugar, some raisins, and you bake them. And it's really wonderful dessert for people who are trying to watch their weight because they're just so darn delicious. Now, growing apples is an art. Apparently, if you grow them from seed, you're not guaranteed to get fruit. And most apple trees are grown from, sticking things on things or growing from a branch or things like that. The apple trees are a wonderful addition to any garden, and certain species can be grown in pots and container gardens. There is a plethora of information on how to grow these lovely trees. Just know if you do buy a small tree at the farmers market where I'm living now, they're selling a lot of fruit trees that are basically little sticks. And just know that when you plant these, it's going to take several years before you get a fruit. But there's no lack of information, and I have a couple links in the program notes on, information on how to do that. So as always, thank you so much for spending your valuable time with me. Make sure to check out the program notes for all sorts of interesting and useful information on things mentioned in this video. And for those of you who are celebrating this week, I hope you can include some apples in your meal. And when you do, make sure to thank Mother Nature for gifting us such a useful, healing, and delicious plant. This is Stephanie Georgia saying, until next time, be well.